So maybe we can start with a big applause and then we can welcome them. Okay, so thank you very much for being here. And my first question goes to any of you that would like to answer it. And this question is, what do you think that it is, and what do you think that it is not applied game design? Your turn.
Want to start? Well, it's not an applied game design, not a game for any application made for. Well, first of all, I have to say I don't believe on serious games as a concept. Maybe because I think any game can be used for a serious purpose. When I was start to play, I learned a lot of things, and most of them, even every game I'm playing from my childhood, were not serious games at all. And I learned a lot of things about history, about mathematics, about even flight simulation, etc. Pilot an aircraft. Then I think any game have a purpose, and for that I think any game can be applied for any of these purposes. I think the magic here is to put all together into a game which has a purpose. And I have a metaphor for that. It's the black humor. Black humor, you can put death and humor in the same plate, in the same table. And I think the magic for a serious game is to achieve this kind of concept, this kind of metaphor, to put something horrible you have to learn with something very fun, very fun to enjoy the both concepts. Next one.
What else do we have?
No. All right. So, well, first of all, I fully agree with you, but also that I would add there that from my perspective, applied games are games where the design purpose is to make a change outside the game itself. So that is one way of looking into applied games, that you have an instrumental purpose for designing the game itself, even though all kinds of games can be used for, but all kinds of games have an effect. But when you are designing for the sole purpose of having the effect, then you are applying game design. And that also makes it easier then that when you are doing the evaluations, that what is the impact of the game, because then you already know that this was the impact I was looking for in the game, and then you are trying to evaluate that one. So that's one perspective. And then I had a really good idea about something, but now I forgot it. So, Jeffrey.
Let me try this, because this you can hear me, yeah? Okay, so I can't not agree with what the other two said. I take it very much from because of my deformed background from a market perspective, and I see applied games actually as being really no different than the AAA video games that we've been playing all of our lives, and actually. If you look at the benefits of video games, and you look at the way that video games can help various ages, from small children to people who are in care homes, to focus their attention, their concentration, strategy skills. They have been used, video games that we buy off the shelf or we download from Steam I mean, I'll get to the point in just a minute, that we download from Steam are used with Asperger patients, Alzheimer's patients, to help them to memorize, to absorb information, and to increase their analytic skills. So in actuality, what we're trying to do through Digital Bros at least, and through our partnerships, is actually trying to close the gap and this misnomer or this idea that video games need to be very didactic and they need to be sort of simplistic to be considered applied. What Yossi said, I think, is very apropos, and it's very interesting in the sense that you start with a problem and then you try to make it entertaining, and you almost forget about the problem. And and we have very good examples of that. For example, just looking at mathematics, we have Keith Devlin's games. We have Calculords, which is another mathematics game, which are very much games that would be mistaken for real video games, but actually are applied to mathematics. You have games like, actually I made a list of them, Never Alone, so you have storytelling games which actually take you into the history, but Minecraft itself. And if we look at the way that Minecraft is being used, it's actually being applied. And it's actually being used to teach history, it's being used to teach mathematics, it's being used to teach religion and ethnicity, cooperation, and actually it's being used as an applied way of teaching kids to program, because they've made it available for children in elementary school to actually build mods. So I actually, in the future, I think the title is The Future of Applied Games, I actually would like to see more of a blurring of lines between what are video games and video games that are actually used transversally across many segments and markets and targets.
Okay, yeah, it's here. Okay, so thank you very much. So if I had to summarize a little bit what you said, we sort of agree on the fact that every game is an applied game, can be used as an applied game. Games can have a purpose outside the game itself. And we want to see what's going to happen in the future in terms of, video games and the blurring frontiers, right, in between them and the rest of the stuff that happens outside. So, how do we design games if we turn and we look into the future and then we look into the new audiences that we are starting to have and that we will have? How are we supposed to game design these games? And I don't know if to say applied games or any game in general, because we said that it could be the same thing. So what are the things that we should take into consideration attending to the new audiences that we have? We have millennials, and we have, like even younger people. So what are we supposed to do?
Trying to. Thank you. I think that's exactly the point. Until now, when we were designing games for fun purposes, AAA or game for consoles or video games for computer, just for fun, we were more focused on issues like the genre of the game. Are we going to do a strategy game? Are we going to do a first-person shooter? What will be the storyline under the game, and all this kind of stuff when we were designing a game until now. But now we have different kind of users, and I think this is not applying just only to video games itself, but for gamifications processes. For example, when you start from an analysis of the users, the needs of the users, and even the needs of the organization, which asks you to make this game or to make this gamification process. And that's because we have to put into the same area the needs of the users, the needs of the organization, the behaviors in terms of gamification frameworks, and the dynamics you want to develop into this experience. And that's the challenge I think we have to face now, the game designers, because we are not completely free in order to make the games we want to design, but we have under the dictatorships of the behaviors or the behavior chain, we need to develop. That's my opinion. Trying to.
So if I continue around the same lines there, I think that the main two challenges in the near future for applied game design are first, that really make impact studies that are games effective in doing what we are claiming. Okay, close. Now better, please. So I repeat it. So that we have to be able to evaluate that are the games making the impact that we claim that they are in controlled experiments there and with really good control groups that prove that okay, for this particular problem, this kind of a game might be as effective as the best available other kind of treatments. So that and we don't have that rigor yet there as far as I know, and we have to build that rigor. We have to build the standards there for doing the evaluations in a proper way. Because otherwise we are going to end up in a situation where we say, well, this game might work, and we made a 2-week impact study and it showed that that it had an effect on the well-being of the children compared to the control group, which didn't have an intervention at all. And that's not really a result at all. It is a result saying that yes, an intervention helps. But we don't know that what was there in the game which was doing that impact. And continuing what Flavio was saying about the design itself, that we also lack the rigor in the design processes and how different kind of experts, especially domain experts, are taking into account when designing a game for an applied game or a game for a purpose. And that there are some good examples out there where people have been doing that really the game designers and the domain experts are working together closely and also complementing each other. But there are about, I say 99% of applied games are bad examples of that what happened. Which means that either the game design is led by the domain expert when it is not going to be a game at all, or the other way around where the game is led by the game designers and game developers when actually then the domain knowledge and the purpose of the game is lost or diluted. And we also need standards there. I'm a big methods guy, so we need methods and not only the method, but we need to have several kinds of methods which we can then apply out of the toolbox into certain kinds of different problems. So I think that those are the two big problems we are facing.
Okay, I'm not a game designer, so I can't really, I can't compete with the two of them, and so I'm not even going to try. It's not my field, but what I would say is that, even based on what Flavio and Yossi said, the idea of being a game designer or a game developer, for that matter, you asked about game design, the role is changing. the need to be a different, to augment or increase knowledge and skills is obviously a transformation that's taking place right now in the industry. What it meant to be a designer perhaps 5 or 10 years ago is not the same thing that it means today. Now, from my perspective, that offers an enormous opportunity for the industry because it means that we are creating professionals. It means that we have another foothold into a market that in many countries in Europe, perhaps less so in Northern Europe, more so in Southern Europe, definitely not in America, Canada, or the UK, but where we're still struggling to legitimize our industry. So I would say that the opportunity, based on what was said, based on what Flavio Mendoza said, and in general, and applied games in the whole, and the fact that game design is definitely an increasingly important part of making successful applied games through methodologies, through experimentation, through understanding and analysis even before you get to the game. That requires a special person that is skilled, that is professional, that has studied, and that all plays into creating a better, more quality industry that is recognized in general in most markets.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, guys. Okay. You see that we have gamified mics or mics, gamified microphones. They're playing with us all the time, but it's fun because we like to play. Okay, so it sounds like really interesting. Flavio was saying something like he put gamification on the table, and he was saying something like we don't have all the freedom of the world in order to design, have some responsibility when designing. Just as a ton of interesting things, like we should make impact studies to prove that games are effective. We need method, we need to measure, we need controlled experiments, we need some standards to produce games for a purpose. And Geoffrey was talking about something like the role is changing. We are creating pros. We have a huge opportunity here in Europe where we are still struggling with the method, and special skills are required. So, who is invited to game design? Who is invited to learn? Who can go and get educated? I mean, where should the people come from?
I think this is more about the education or academic stuff. Yeah.
We'll change the order this time. Who? Well, I mean, we have a pretty holistic view on who, which is a good way of saying that if you've got a huge passion for video games, something you're dreaming about since you're 3 years old, you're probably a good who. We believe that. Okay, so if we're talking about pure game design, so we're not talking about game programmers, we're not talking about artists and animators, we're talking about game designers. It's a difficult question it's a difficult question to answer because our experience has been both in games that we have published, games that we're actually currently developing, or students who are part of the academy, that they come from some of the most diverse backgrounds that you can imagine. And I won't name them all, but just to give you a couple of experiences, we have people who actually were programmers who now want to be game designers, and we have people who were car mechanics that now want to be game designers. People who are trying to re-qualify their lives and think that they have something to contribute. Now, probably most of what they contribute for the first 50 years won't be any good, and it'll be a lot of trial and error. But that is the secret to success for most software houses, big or small, indies or AAA. So, from my perspective, or from our perspective, it's very difficult to pinpoint. It's very difficult to pinpoint specifically who. it is a market that is becoming extremely, or already is extremely competitive. And so one of the answers to the who is how much drive and how much time do you want to dedicate of your personal life to become a game designer? And if it's something that you do on the side, that's fine, but it's a hobby. But if you want to truly become a game designer, then you have to accrue a number of skills from the methodologies of being a game designer, how to study and analyze a gameplay, and how to put together a GDD, and so on, to networking and understanding who are the right people to bounce your ideas off of, to how do you speak to experts, and how do you involve experts. So your game, your serious game, becomes something that is authoritative, credible, and used by the market. So that might be a little bit more general than you were looking for, but that's kind of our holistic view of who in the game design.
Yes, and I have to agree. And,
That's good.
so it is sort of like saying that it is that everyone can be a game designer, and also that that's the same way as everyone can sing. But in order to be a world-class singer, first of all, that you have to have the dedication, the drive, and you have to do game design and also train for the game design. And one more thing which I would like to add there, which is a bit more specific there, that being a game designer also means that you should be open to go beyond your comfort zone, go beyond games when you are learning stuff. Be curious, learn about social psychology, psychology of emotional motivation, history, or well, in one sense that you have to be interested in almost everything in order to be a good game designer. Because the good game designer, by getting all these influences from the sciences and from the other arts, will give you a better understanding that what being a human is. And I think that games are really about what we are as human beings, because that is, games are reflecting how our minds are processing of how we are in the world in the first place. And there's in order to make this connection happen, you have to understand yourself. Now I think, did I make no idea?
Any psychologist in this room, please contact me after the presentation. I'm agree with both of them, Geoffrey and Jussi. And I want to say there are two different approaches. The first approach, I think, is from the educational organizations. There is methodology. There are methodologies to analyze even game design from a perspective of games for purposes, so gamification. We have gamification frameworks, but the lack I found recently there is no any bridge between the gamification framework for analyze even to design some experience and how to design or how to translate it into a game experience or gamified experience. We are reviewing now a very well-known gamification framework that is called the Gamification Model Canvas. I don't know if you heard from that before. The first lack we found was the user profiling, and we were working a lot to fix it. And now we found this lack on the mechanics, how to translate all these very nice gamification analysis we have to do before the designing to translate into a gamified experience or a serious game experience of any game-like experience. And now we're working on that, on how to, and reviewing a lot of game design books and methods, etc. Because that's what we are doing in the foundation, research, to transform this research into methodologies. And this is one of the first approach. Researchers or research organization in touch with educational organizations. That's the first approach. And the second approach is the concept any game designer had to have to itself. Because now a game designer is not just a designer for games anymore. The games is completely different now. Games are completely different things that we were thinking just a couple of years ago. To design a game is to design an experience. And completely different experience from the reality, or an experience to impact completely direct into your daily experience, or acts, or actions, or behaviors. That's the future for game design for me. You have to design some experience in any field, in any sector. That's because you have to open your scope and start on thinking, on design experience for health, experience for marketing, experience for education, etc.
Well, thank you guys very much. Jeffrey was saying that who can game design? Anyone that has a huge passion, right? People that want to requalify their lives. But if you want to do it, like for the sake of truth, then it's not just a hobby. In fact, Jussi was saying something interesting, like everyone can sing. That doesn't mean that you're the best singer in the world, right? So yeah, everyone can be, but this thing is complex. Flavio was mentioning some gamification frameworks. He was talking about the gamification model canvas, so you have it here on the screen for you to see it. Do we have any questions from the audience? Because you might like to participate and to ask something. Yeah?
Thank you. The question would be, how do you compare the designing of a game to the designing of a building by an architect? An architect has to create experiences. They use the same words. They have to create experiences. They have goals. They have a concept of how the people would deal with this reality. They have limitations in economics. They have methodologies. They have everything you told them. But everybody agrees that an architect would be a very bad one if only have good methods and good technologies to produce their product. What's the difference between an architect and a game designer?
No, I think the architecture maybe is the closest discipline to game designing, because it's very holistic also. As you can see when you play a first-person shooter or 3D game, there are a lot of architecture around. And specifically, there is a book, what is speaking about the concepts about architecture and game designing or games put it together. And a lot of architects are very interested in the game field a lot, because you can. When I started to research on video games, I start from the 3D architecture experience, the 3D sculpture experience, how to represent in 3D any spatial or volume object into this digital and artificial environment. In the origin of the 3D representations, there are a lot of architects involved on that. I would like to see in the future, and there are some experience in the present at all, of ludic buildings, ludic urban spaces, or ludified or gamified urban spaces, because it's all about interaction of objects. I think a door is the first interaction made by the human in a space, and then I think it's completely related with the both fields. And for example, in Doom, one of the most used element of game design, it was the doors. What is behind a door in Doom is one of the most exciting experiences in the game, and I think is very close to both disciplines.
That's a good question, and also that architecture and game design, they are close. And some of the methods, design methods and the design thinking tools, they are being borrowed from architecture. And I've been working with the patterns approach, which is from Christopher Alexander's patterns approach for architecture, that's how to apply the patterns approach to game design. The main difference between architecture and game design, I think, is that when you're designing a game, that there are a lot of more moving things than architecture, which complicates the matter. And also that we have to take into account a lot of other media than just the basic interaction or the spatial design itself, the story, the music and so on, even though in architecture that you might take into this account, which leads to the ludic architecture or the playful spaces. And the last point I want to make there, that having methods and following methods is not going to make you a great architect, not even a good one, and the same thing applies to the game design. If you have the methods, it is just that the methods are tools that you have to use, and they give you a better understanding how to deal with complex design situations. Otherwise, that you are relying on just your intuition, and often the intuition is just plain wrong.
I think that there is a another comparison to game design, which is actually not architecture. I don't actually think game design is like architecture, because I think architecture, you build a building and it's very isolated. Yes, you have to think about all of the infrastructure, you have to think about the floors, you have to think about the weight proportion, the balance, and so on and so forth. But I think that game design is actually much more like urban planning. If you study urban planning, and that's still going on. I mean, even cities that are have been around for 500 or 600 years, there are various phases where they go through a review of their urban plan. And game design is much more like an open world. Okay, so if we look at open world, and urban planning is really an open world. And I actually believe, and I think this is actually true to many industries, and I think we need to be careful, because I think as an industry grows, like our industry, there is a tendency to want to close it in with methodology, with science. This is the way you do it, with formulas, and actually make it like a big program. And I think we need to be very careful. Methodology is important. You can't have a bunch of sort of free radicals kind of doing whatever they want to do. But having said that, that's actually how some of the best development engines came out of the ground. If people didn't experiment, if people didn't think out of the box, if people, just to take your point, didn't think about designing a game not as a game, They didn't think about video games. They didn't think about gamification. They didn't think about the margins that they had to work inside, but they completely thought out of the box, and that made then we wouldn't have a lot of what we have today, and we surely would not have, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about applied games. We would not have applied games or gaming methodologies to very, very serious problems. Social, medical, educational problems. And I think that's a lot like building a city. I think it's a lot like when you look out into your city and you see all the things that are wrong. I live in Milan, and every morning I tell my wife at least 2 things which are wrong with Milan. And I've got a very long list that I have things I'd like to be resolved. We need a good game designer for that. Somebody who can think out of the box. Somebody who can actually take those methodologies and think, you know what? Okay, I know how it works, but I'm gonna put those away right now, and I'm gonna think about something else. And then you can apply them to see if actually they work.
Thank you very much. I have another question.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what the panel's already said. I don't like the word gamification or don't like the term serious games either. But I think games are a fundamental part of human nature. And every one of us, whether consciously or unconsciously, uses gamification in our lives to influence behaviour, largely without the use of technology. The question I have though is really about the impact of where applied games and gamification is going, the impact on human beings and society. Because if you just take games for health example, it's one of my passions about the potential for sensor technologies and games to influence people's personal health management. The question is, though, that if these tools are, we're designing games and we're developing technologies to address some of these serious challenges, what is likely to be the impact on the professionals who already work in these spaces? So if you design the applied games for education, what is the impact on teachers who make their living from being the source of knowledge and the ability to transfer knowledge? If we shift how we teach people, if we shift how we change behaviour and use technology more to do that, what's likely to be the impact on those human beings who are involved in that sector?
Yes. I may first about there was a wonderful anecdote from a teacher, university lecturer, about that. That was exactly the question that was asked from her. Was that, so what will you do when we have this beautiful game which can teach the basic history classes that you have been teaching now? And the teacher said, that is absolutely wonderful. Then I can focus on really the right things I want to teach those kids and not just the basic facts. So then it gives the teachers the ability to spend their time in really teaching the kids and not just
We're all on the microphone.
It wasn't me. Hello? Hello? Yeah, where was I? So it is. All right, now better. Now it's okay. So, in one sense, it gives those professionals, in some cases at least, but those professionals freedom to really do the things that they really think they should be doing. And I guess the same applies to some of the doctors, at least, that if you have the measurements or the checking the adherence or getting the data, that is gamified and that's automatic, then you can spend more time on the patient and the patient-doctor relationship in itself, which is then usually ends up in a better results. So it frees up the resources for doing the right things.
Yeah. Actually, I'm more worried about not to give this kind of tool to teacher than give it to them, because we are, especially here in Spain, we are on the delay of giving very useful tools to teachers, because they are using the tool that we're using the last 200 years ago, from the last 200 years ago. And then I think it's urgent to give more tools to teachers, even games or things like games, but also give to them some new frameworks and methodologies in order to face the new challenge they have with the students. Because the students have a completely different culture in their houses. They are dealing with a lot of information, with a lot of gadgets, with a lot of software, etc. And when they came into the classes, the students, I'm speaking about it, when they came into the classes, I think for them they had to be like, go to the past, like a history class indeed. I think the teachers now are naked because they cannot compete with the interfaces, with the gadgets, with the elements, components that the student have in their houses. Now we have to enforce, we have to encourage the teacher with the kind of, not just games, not just software, but new kind of methodologies, new kind of relationships with the students. Speaking about gamification, this magic word, I would like to say that I completely agree with you, because gamification is not a new thing, it's a new word, but we need the word to invest the research. But of course, we were using gamification from the very first time of the history, human history, to teach things. Maybe the industrial age was an interruption because the official education was formed by the governments, etc. And now, because we need more creative jobs, we rescued the gamification for us. But I think we have to be more worried about what kind of tools we have to give to the teachers, because now in almost the Spanish classroom, we don't have enough tools for them.
I'd actually like to know what you think, because I'm sure that you have a very interesting view on your question. I simply think that we're not ready. I don't think the professionals are ready. I think that there is a lot of awareness training and, let's say, operational training that needs to happen before teachers, doctors, nutritionists, scientists, all the people who actually have the opportunity to use a video game or a game as a means to either train the trainer, train themselves, understand phenomena, collect data, and I actually think that they are not prepared. I think that there are huge benefits, but I think what I'm about to say is very obvious. There are huge benefits to the employment world, to society, for professionals to be using tools to help them become better professionals, to help them to understand their job better, to be able to actually carry out an operation before actually going into the operating room, and understand the effects of that. And there are a lot of things that we could be doing to hedge risk in general and to better our lives if they were prepared. And I think that there's probably, and I hope, that we will see an emergence of people who are actually involved in training people to understand exactly the benefits that these things will bring. So, for example, you have professionals, you have salespeople who go in to sell medical instrumentation to doctors. The future could hold that we actually have sales professionals that go in and sell games to doctors. They may not be called games because doctors don't want to hear the word game. It may not be appropriate for them. We'll call them something else. We'll give it a definition because we need to give definitions so we understand our lives. But if I've understood your question correctly, at least in part, there's a lot more groundwork that we need to do for this to become what we, I think, all want it to become and to be able to enjoy the benefits of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I come back with the microphone.
I just want to make a very quick response to the question. I agree with you. I don't think the professionals are ready for it. And one of the reasons is that if you think of education as a game, which has rules, people who are trained to be professional teachers, professional doctors, the deal is that you're educated, you go to university, you have 3 years of study, you learn all of this stuff, and then you go into a profession which is highly regarded and has a status. And now you find, whether it's doctors, whether it's any kind of professional, that it's actually lay people who have access to the technology to game, not just games, but also the web. They can come to you, a patient can go to a doctor far more informed about their condition than the doctor. And so I think this is a real problem for society. And one of the things that worries me about the way things are developing is that every nation, every government is developing education policies based on getting as many people as possible through university to get a degree, with the deal that at the end of that they will get a job. Well, the reality is they won't get a job. They will not get a job based on having a degree. The people who are most likely to find it easy to get a job are people who've gone through vocational training. You know, electricians, plumbers, where there will always be a demand for that kind of thing. So I think society really needs to have a good think about the way technology impacts us.
Just one thing on that. I mean, if we look at, we spend a lot of time looking at the market and the opportunities the market offers. I mean, one of our businesses is training. We are a vocational school. We take kids out of high school. That's the minimum requirement that want to be game developers. And we are a vocational school. We train kids as though, pretty much like if you were going to be an electrician or a plumber, or I don't, to be honest with you, my view is that it's really no different. It's probably more noble. Video games are more noble. It's much more fun. But we use the same kind of practices, learning by doing, and so on and so forth. And if you look at the market today, I mean, we are in an industry that is a job creator. And if you are job ready, it is very possible that within the next at least 5 years, I believe, I'm not that smart to look at any further, probably even 5 years, not that smart, but that you will actually be able to find something to do to live. And if you look at the job boards, and I spend time personally looking at job boards, looking at both individual studios, search firms, there are hundreds of job openings today, globally, in the game development market for a variety of roles I've never even heard of. The subset of the subset of the subset of the game designer, of the level designer, of the programmer, and if you have the right training, you can take advantage of that. I mean, we are an industry that has compound growth of at least 10 to 12% every year. We're going to close this year probably around $92 billion. And next year, by 2017, they're looking into it, they close at $111 billion. And that's just in development. So we're not talking about console sales or downloads. Downloads. We're just talking about software development revenues.
Okay, well, thank you very much for being so passionate. Thank you to the audience for asking. I'm sorry but I don't have to cut, although it's really interesting. But we have 2 more roundtables coming at 11. And you might want to have like a nice coffee during 15 minutes, and then you can like keep the discussion alive. So we're going to have the Games for Health and Wellbeing roundtable here at 11, and we are also having the iterative game jam design roundtable at 11 on the first floor. So thank you very much, Yussi. Thank you very much, Geoffrey. Thank you very much, Flavio. Thank you very much, everyone. It's been really